Hello, I'm EnterElysium. XCOM Chimera Squad has been out for a few weeks now. It simplifies the old XCOM formula while introducing a whole load of new mechanics, and I thought because of that it might be a really good idea to go over my top 10 tips for XCOM Chimera Squad. Now bear in mind this is a sponsored video, there'll be a link down below if you wish to check that out to go get yourself XCOM Chimera Squad. You can click the link down below to do so, but without further ado, we're going to get going and we're going to start off with my first top tip, which is all about characters. Now, unlike in the original XCOMs, instead of your people just being a number of different classes with all relatively similar abilities depending on how you go down the tree, each character in XCOM Chimera Squad is actually a character. They have completely different personalities, looks, voice, and abilities, and that means that naturally some are going to be better than others. You actually start off with 4 default characters if you start off with the tutorial enabled, but if you don't, you get to pick your 4 starting characters. And because of that, one of the most important things is knowing which characters are fantastic and which are maybe not quite as good. My 4 top characters are Blue Blood, Patchwork, Terminal, and potentially Zephyr. So very quickly, why they're absolutely fantastic. Blue Blood can make multiple attacks per round, and with some of the later abilities is a fantastic damage dealer. Patchwork is really good against one of the factions who are very focused on mechanical enemies. Terminal can heal you, which is great, but she also comes with an ability to give someone else an extra action, which is fantastic. And finally, Zephyr. Zephyr is a bit more of a specialist in that Zephyr doesn't have a gun and just goes around punching people. And this is actually really good because it's a 100% chance to hit. Getting guaranteed damage is fantastic. There are a number of others who might potentially be the best, but Blue Blood and Terminal are absolutely fantastic characters and pretty much remain on my squad at all times unless I'm busy training them. And this brings me on to the second tip, which is particularly why these characters are amazing. Turn order. So unlike in the older XCOM games where you take all your units' turns and then the aliens all get their go and then vice versa, XCOM Chimera Squad brings in a whole new initiative order thing where each different character has a different place in the initiative order. And this is incredibly important because you should probably focus on taking down people who are going to be acting sooner so that, say, if you take out the person who's acting next, having the enemy not shoot at you is the way to win this game, and quite often that means just shooting them first, which you should do with the initiative order. So trying to manipulate the initiative order, using abilities that can manipulate the initiative order, is the way to really win this game. So basically reducing enemy actions by increasing your output of damage, which often means trying to get more actions before they do. And there are a few ways to do this. I mean, not only just shooting them in the order before they can do an action, or stunning them before they can do an action. You might not need to target the person who does the most damage, potentially the person who just goes next, but also there are some very, very important abilities. For instance, once every mission you get the team up ability, which allows you to just pull someone up the initiative order, which is fantastic, especially when you combine it with something like Blue Blood, who can take 2 attacks on their turn. So suddenly, instead of going, right, well, I take my attack and then I guess it's their go, you can say, I get my attack, oh, and then I'll take Blue Blood, who has maybe 2 attacks. So suddenly you've got 3 attacks instead of 1. Being able to do that is fantastic. So remember to use your team up ability. It can often get forgot, and you're just like, oh, maybe I'll use this later or something. If you think you need the damage to stop enemies shooting you, take it. It's there for a reason, you might as well use it. Secondly, the cooperation ability, which is actually one of Terminal's abilities, is fantastic. It basically is an ability where she says, as one of my actions, I get 2 actions, as one of them, I will let someone else take an action. Now, the default in the game is, it's broken by a number of characters and situations, but the default in the game is you only get 1 attack action. There are some abilities that get around that, but normally you have 2 actions, one of them can be an attack, and that will end your turn. But if you cooperate someone, they get an action, they can make an attack, and then it goes back to you with your other action, you can make an attack. So you can use Terminal to give someone an attack, and then get an attack with Terminal. So Terminal can effectively take 2 attack actions with that, and this is the kind of thing that makes your game really powerful. If you can get extra attacks, you win. So the cooperation ability is fantastic. And the last one I'll come up to in terms of increasing your own DPS output and the number of actions you can take is Blue Blood. As I mentioned before, Blue Blood can take 2 attacks by default. It's fantastic. So Blue Blood. That's it, just Blue Blood. He's great. Get him. My third top tip is Intel. You get 3 resources in this game to use. You get credits, Elerium, and Intel. And you can get these a number of different ways and so on, but the most important one, at least for me, is intel. Because intel can be used for a number of things that are incredibly important. You can use it to build field teams, which you need to be able to reduce the panic, which stops you from failing the game. You can use it to get incredibly powerful items from the scavenger market, which is the black market in the game. It's actually the best resource, hands down, and you get it a few different ways. Firstly, you can gain it with field teams as you can the others, just by having a field team who passively give you a little bit. You can also get intel by knocking people out. Every person you knock out in a mission will give you an extra 20% chance at gaining 20 intel. So if you knock 4 people out, you'll have an 80% chance to gain 20 intel. You don't really get any bonus for going over 5 people, but getting 20 intel in a mission, especially if it doesn't really mean going out of your way, so just running up and hitting someone over the head to knock them out, or using some abilities that knock people out, such as using tranquilizer rounds with any gun, or using, say, the lethal bash ability with Zephyr with the upgrade that makes it non-lethal. All of these things will knock people out, and then at the end of the mission, you'll get extra intel if you just happen to be lucky, or if you manage to knock 5 people out or above. And then finally, bonus objectives. Sometimes you'll get a bonus objective in a mission. If you complete that, you can get stuff, which includes intel. All of these are good ways to get intel, and intel is really, really, really important, especially because of the scavenger market, which is my number 4 tip. The scavenger market and intel. You can get the best epic tier weapons at the scavenger market. You can also get top tier upgrades, like getting a plus 15% aim mod quite early on in the game will make a huge difference, especially if you give it to someone whose damage is very important. Like Blue Blood, they do cost a lot of intel, so try and keep some intel around, and when the scavenger market shows up, tend to buy at least one thing, because they are really, really good and you will want to save up for them. My top 5 tip: scars. Scars happen when a soldier is gravely wounded or knocked unconscious. They're only guaranteed to happen when you're knocked unconscious, but there's a pretty high chance when you're wounded. And these give you a negative trait that can be quite bad, sometimes minus dodge, minus mobility, or minus health, and sometimes not quite so bad, like minus crit. These can be removed via training the soldier. You basically put them through rehab, and then the trait slowly will disappear over a few days. But definitely with stuff like minus movement and minus dodge, because it's much more likely to get you hit, they're worth getting rid of. However, stuff like minus crit is maybe not as important, and especially if you need a character for a mission that's upcoming, probably not worth getting rid of minus crit, because that won't really affect you too much, whereas the others will. So bear in mind that you can train away these abilities, but don't go out of your way to get rid of a scar that is just minus crit if your unit is very important to you, or if you're finding yourself struggling a little bit and that unit is holding up your squad. Speaking of soldiers being taken out, my top 6 tip is androids. Androids are these kind of Chappie-esque robot soldiers who can be deployed if one of your units goes down. So if one of your units goes down and you manage to stabilize them and you go on to the next encounter, you won't have that unit. If you have an android available, the android will replace them. Androids, by default, don't really have many abilities. They're kind of just a fill-in soldier. You can upgrade them to get these abilities, but my tip is don't. Androids are pretty terrible, and going really deep on the research tree for a niche unit that only happens if a unit goes down, doesn't die but isn't revived and just lays there stabilized, but you've also got another encounter coming and then you'll get a fill-in unit, which really isn't that good, is just not great. You're much better off investigating other avenues of research that will stop you from going down, or give you bonuses that will kill enemies before they shoot you and stop you going down. You get the idea. Speaking of not going down and things to research, my top 7 tip is armor. When you can research new armor upgrades, do it, because upgrades to armor give you bonus HP and bonus number of consumables you can carry. Consumables are great, they don't actually take an action to use, so it's just free stuff. Armor upgrades are completely worth it because they give you 2 things for 1: HP and consumables, both of which you will definitely want and use. My number 8 tip is aggressive enemies. When you're breaching, you'll get 3 different types of enemies. You'll get surprised enemies who are just standing around gormlessly. You'll get alert enemies who, once you've breached, will then take an action to hide or maybe boost their mobility, but they won't aggressively attack you. And then you'll get aggressive enemies who, as soon as you breach and you do your shots, will then shoot back. In a lot of situations, you'll want to try and focus on the aggressive enemies. They are going to take shots at you, so shooting them before they can shoot you is a really good idea. However, it only really matters if you can take them out. If you can take an enemy out, then they're not going to be shooting at you. So bear in mind that aggressive enemies are really only worth shooting at if you can stop them shooting back. Either that means everyone shoots an aggressive enemy, or if you have an ability that can stun them, or if you have an entry point that says, hey, successful shot stun people, that's fantastic, because of course if you stun them, they can't shoot back on the breach. Trying to reduce the enemies shooting at you on a breach is a good idea, but at the same time, if you can't take them down, you might as well not be shooting them, because they'll still shoot you at 1 HP or at 10. Epic weapons. So epic weapons are absolutely fantastic, and if you see one come up as a mission objective, grab it, because if you can get that as a reward, it is fantastic. What epic weapons do is they grant you a bonus ability. Some of these abilities you will have definitely seen before from XCOM games, such as Run and Gun, where you can take a dash action and then a shot with the shotgun. Or Chain Shot, where if your first shot at minus 15% to hit hits, you instantly take a second shot. Which, again, increasing the amount of damage you can do, taking people down earlier is the way to just win the game. And of course, Lightning Hands, which I mentioned earlier about Blue Blood, which is you get a free attack per turn. It's great. Epic weapons are fantastic, and you shouldn't be missing out on them if they show up. Grab them because they will definitely improve your game. And my number 10 tip is items. Just items in general. Firstly, when you're breaching, you can use items. It sometimes is a little bit hard to see, but there is actually a little drop down if you click, and then you can use some items that can be used during breaches, which include abilities. You can get stuff like heals, chucking a scanner in to get you plus 50 crit, stuff like that. But the most important thing is to use them, because there is definitely a tendency in video games to say, oh, I should keep this in reserve in case I need it later. If you think you need to use it, and you're dubious, use it. If you save it, you might not use it later. So my general tip will actually just be if you're dubious about using something, do it. Items are fantastic because they don't take an action. You get 2 actions per turn, and only one of them can be an attack for most people. But you can chuck a grenade, and you can do other things with your items. And then also you still get your 2 actions. So take items with you, put items in your slots, use the new upgraded armor you got, if you listened to my earlier advice, to put all the items you can on your person, and then, if you're in doubt, use them. Items are fun. And that's my top 10 tips for XCOM Chimera Squad. Hopefully you enjoyed and found it useful. Feel free to add your own tips down in the comments, or maybe riff on some of my tips. I'm actually kind of interested in this. I know this is a big YouTube thing where you say, hey, if you've got your own tips or whatever, but I'm genuinely interested to see what tips you think are important. And particularly, like, if you've got a different, like, this is my favorite character, this is the character I think is really awesome, let me know down in the comment section, because I definitely find that Blue Blood, Patchwork, Terminal, and to an extent Zephyr are really good. Godmother, who is one of the starting 4 from the tutorial, is also reasonable, but she's just good. She's not Blue Blood. Reminder, this has been a sponsored video, a link down below if you want to check out XCOM Chimera Squad. I've been EnterElysium, and until next time, stay shiny.